Okay, listen, it's all been fun and games so far. That ends today. You're in my house now. You know who I was before I was the church marketing guy? I was the World of Warcraft guy. You know what I was before that? A loser. You know what I was before that?
I was a graphic designer, buddy.
I've been designing so long, my oldest work is old enough to sign up for its driving permit. My portfolio's so hot, it makes your mixtape look like my childhood dog. Dead. You know Draplin? We're basically best friends. He signed my book. I'm not messing around anymore. Your font choices suck. You can't tell a typeface from a tilde. I'm about to go Gutenberg on your gluteus. Here's 5 fonts you need to delete off every computer at your church because God's people deserve better than this. Welcome to Blackbar. Hi, I'm Caleb. Let's talk about what fonts are actually for in the first place. Like everything in graphic design, fonts are a communication tool. I like to think of them as the equivalent to nonverbal communication in speech. There's a difference between saying, I love you, and I love you. Your vocal inflections and mannerisms communicate way more about your intent than the words themselves. The same goes for fonts. There's a difference between writing I love you and I love you. One feels genuine and the other... The typeface itself changes the context of the language that's used. Fonts aren't just about finding something trendy or eye-catching. They're about communicating an emotion, an idea. With that established, let's talk about the fonts that suck at it. Number 5, the legendary Papyrus. No, Papyrus is not the right tool to communicate something as ancient, other than what is most assuredly your birth certificate. It's the go-to font for anything handwritten for those of us who haven't figured out there are more fonts available than the ones that come pre-installed on your computer. Listen, good handwriting fonts are hard to find. The problem is that real handwriting is inconsistent. Not every E is gonna look the same. If you're using a bad font, however, they will. Quality typefaces come with special features like alternate glyphs and ligatures. Alternate glyphs are alternative stylistic options for certain letters. Mixing up often repeating letters in a word or sentence with alternate glyphs is an easy way to make your type feel more organic. Ligatures are special characters that take the place of 2 or more letters that would otherwise clash in an unpleasant way. For example, a lowercase f and I will unfortunately typically intersect when typed adjacent to each other. A ligature will replace both letters with a new single character that is built to rectify the unpleasant crossover with a handcrafted solution. Papyrus has neither of these features. Plus, it's ugly as sin. Good handwriting fonts are out there. Papyrus is just not one of them. Not even close. Number 4, a huge personal pet peeve of mine, grunge fonts. Listen, your youth group's logo looks like a metalcore band from 2004. I would know, I was in one. Fonts don't distress like this, guys. Who are we kidding? I mean, don't get me wrong, I like as much texture as much as the next guy, but you're not gonna get real, believable texture built into a font. Without going into all of the details, fonts are what we call vector graphics. Unlike normal pictures, which are made of pixels, also known as raster artwork, text is structured with mathematically defined lines and paths between nodes. Just like how you can zoom into a graph on your calculator and the line doesn't get blurry, vector graphics are incredibly useful because our ability to be infinitely scalable. A vector logo will look clean and crisp on a business card and a billboard. As a side effect, however, fonts can't actually fade the same way pixels can. Any point is either inside or outside the line. There is no in between. Most of the time, this is fine. It's what you want. For distressed text, it's not. Real distressed text doesn't break off into chunks like the fonts you've seen would like you to believe. They wear down from use, from exposure to the elements, from friction. The ink breaks up and washes away at an inconsistent rate. That kind of effect just can't be done in an all-in-one font package. If you want convincing texture distressing, find a clean, standard font to start with and do the distressing yourself. Are you ready for the world's fastest Photoshop tutorial on convincing distressed text? Let's go. First, type out your text in the font and color you're looking for. Second, find a grungy texture you like. If you need the type to look like it's going on a specific material, make sure the texture matches that material. Desaturate the texture and place it in your canvas over the type. Next, save your document as a temporary PSD. I usually call mine Displacer. You'll see why in a minute. Next, head to Select, Color Range, and switch the selection mode to Highlights. Adjust the fuzziness and range until you have a nice wide range of contrast across the texture. When you hit OK, you'll find your texture has been converted into a selection. Hide the grunge layer, then select your text layer and click the Add Layer Mask button at the bottom of the layer panel. The effect will likely need some tuning, so select the layer mask thumbnail in the layer panel and head to Image, Adjustments, and Levels to play with the contrast of the mask until you've found the desired amount of grunginess. Lastly, head to Filter, Distort, and then Displace. Photoshop will likely tell you that you need to convert your text into a smart object. Just select Yes. The settings in this menu will change depending on the size of your document, but I typically set my scales from 2 to 5 pixels. Hit OK and then find the displacer file we saved earlier. After applying, you'll find that every pixel of your text has been nudged slightly vertically and horizontally depending on the brightness of the texture that we applied earlier. Now, the font fades in a convincing way and even bends and breaks in line with the same texture that we applied as the distressing mask. That is a convincing effect. That is something you can use on any font. You're welcome. All right, back to fonts. Number 3, script fonts in all caps. I have no idea why it's even necessary to talk about this. Like, why is this a thing that people do? Do you like watching people like me suffer? Do you hate me? Listen, fonts are used to communicate emotion, sure, but if you can't read the text, you can't communicate at all. You might as well be speaking in tongues. Maybe that's it. Maybe this is just a level of spiritual graphic design that I haven't achieved yet.
Can I get an interpretation?
This idea goes way beyond just script fonts with the caps lock turned on. If I can't read your text, you've not done your job. Before sending anything to print or publishing, run your work past a few unbiased observers and make sure that everything is legible. Your text could be too small or too thin or too distorted or anything. Unless you're messing with wingdings, if I can't read your slide from the back of the sanctuary, you've missed the mark. Okay, number 2. I'm gonna catch some flack for this one, but hear me out. Helvetica. No, it's fine. It's fine. Where did you get this? Hey. Listen, I love Helvetica. Look, what it did for fonts and graphic design at large is incredible. The introduction of the typeface was one of the largest paradigm shifts in graphic design history. It's an important piece of art that any graphic designer worth their salt needs to have in their collection. That being said, Helvetica is not the best for everything. Helvetica was built as the ultimate invisible font. It communicated nothing but on purpose. It was infinitely malleable into any type of messaging that you like. However, it wasn't, and isn't, always the best choice for every emotion. There are folk out there that worship the baseline that Helvetica is typed on. It's the first font they grab for, and they rarely move outside of that box. Boys and girls, it's time to go outside. There are other great, simple, clean sans serif fonts that can communicate some ideas way more effectively than Helvetica can. Heck, this really goes for any font that you're just glued to. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a consistent brand font and a style, but not every brand you make needs to be written with the same font inflection. Try new things, try different ideas. Get outside of your comfort zone. Lastly, the number 1 font your church should stay away from is... I don't even need to build this up. Half of you are here just to watch another person jump on the proverbial dog pile of the world's worst font, Comic Sans. There are 2 camps on the Comic Sans grounds. The first camp knows and understands how terrible and useless of a font it is. They'd like nothing more than to wipe it off the face of the earth. The second camp either hasn't heard the criticism or they just don't care. It works for them and they're happy to keep using it. It's just so fun, they say. I want all of my church's announcements to look like they've been drafted by a computer pretending to be a second grader. You're both wrong. Comic Sans is usable, but just in a very, very, very specific use case. Comic Sans was designed specifically to mirror comic book text in a way that could be easily legible in small sizes at low resolution screens. Just give it a shot. Type any sentence in Comic Sans and any other font. Shrink the two down together. I promise you that Comic Sans will be more legible nearly every time. This is what it's made for, and it does it very, very well. As much as it's easy to rattle off on a video of a bunch of fonts I would like to see removed from existence, the fact of the matter is that nearly every font, just like any tool, will always have a place in very specific scenarios. Being a designer means knowing when to use which tool for which job. Every typeface was built for a specific purpose. Understand what you're trying to communicate and choose the best tool that's the best for the job. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Blackbar. If you'd like to dive deeper into anything we talk about on the show, make sure to check out the Blackbar podcast. In addition, if you have any questions or want to meet other like-minded people, check out the Discord. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.